Salutations, travelers! If I say wet socks, you think of... How's that for an icebreaker? So, besides being one of the rare beings able to rock socks and sandals and still look attractive, what else is she good at? Absurdly high burst damage. For reference, at talent 10, her burst ratio climbs over 4000%. As a comparison, Keqing reaches just over 800%. High sustained damage with her charge attacks, and flexibility. Her strong burst and charge attacks allow her to easily swap between main and sub DPS. But what is she bad at? Low utility. She's hyper-focused on personal damage and nothing else. Clunky alternate sprint. Her alternate sprint is a core part of her kit and can't be turned off. At the best of times, it can be jarring and takes some getting used to. At the worst, get used to losing your temper yelling, "What the hell am I stuck on again?" What about stats? Stock standard here, the usual crit, attack, cryo. You will also want around 150% ER or a battery as her burst is rather expensive. And sets. Now this gets more interesting and somewhat controversial. Two main schools of thought here. The Blizzard Stray Absolutists will let you know about the insanely high value of the crit rate granted by this set. Doubly so on frozen targets and triply... is that a word? Even more so in a freeze team comp. And they are absolutely right, this will give you, in the right circumstances, unrivaled value. Then, theoretics will point out how not every enemy can be frozen, and some cannot even be affected by cryo. Likewise, you limit yourself to freeze comps, as other reactions will make maintaining cryo uptime very difficult. Emblem of Severed Fate, while not offering as much raw damage, is a lot more reliable. And then there's this idiot you're listening to saying, "Screw all that, run Shimenawa 4-piece and be the storm that is approaching." Actually, don't. And weapons. Free to play. Festering Desire. If you missed it, I'm sorry for reminding you about it. If you got it, you know how amazing it is, and it isn't different here. It gives you all the gear you're gonna need, and the passive is outstanding as always. Crafting. This sword is your best crafted option. A lot of attack, and the passive, especially at high refine, will handle your energy issues. Battle Pass and Shop. Ayaka makes good use of attack, and crit is king. The Black Sword, Black Cliff, and Royal will serve you well. Gatcha 4-star. I don't think any of these is great, but if the previous options are unavailable, Fabulous, Sacrificial, and the Flute are serviceable. And Gatcha 5-star. Pretty much any of them, aside from Aquila, outclasses all the previous choices. Mist Splitter is your strongest choice, followed by Haran Geppaku Futsu and Primordial Jade Cutter. But Skyward, Summit, and Freedom aren't far behind. And talents. First, her alternate sprint, Senho. Sprinting or dodging will cloak you in a frozen fog that is both faster and slower than normal sprint. It moves faster, but gets stuck on pebbles, a slightly stiff blade of grass, and sometimes on nothing, but it just wants to mess with you. When it does work, it's a pretty cool move. It lets you move on water, and when you pop out, you apply cryo all around you and infuse your blade for 5 seconds. This works directly with the passive Kanten Senmyou Blessing, which will grant you 18% cryo damage and 10 stamina if you apply cryo to an opponent while coming out of Senho. Kamisato Arts Kabuki. Notable here is her charge attacks have excellent multipliers and low stamina cost. To further build upon this, Kanten Senmyou Blessing that we just went over buffs it with cryo application, additional cryo damage, and stamina restoration. Seeing a pattern yet? Well, remember this, we will be back to it soon. Next is her skill, Kamisato Arts Hyouka. Medium cryo AoE around you. Launch small opponents, does decent damage with a 10-second cooldown. Not spectacular in any way, but not bad either. It comes with a passive though, Amatsumi Kunitsumi Sanctification. Try saying that one fast 10 times. After using Hyouka, Ayaka's normal and charge attacks deal 30% increased damage for 6 seconds. Remember what I said about her pattern? And her burst, Kamisato Arts Sumetsu. Now this is what I imagine would happen if you try to build a nuclear-powered blender and it got out of control. And it behaves pretty much like it, with the major distinction that it doesn't blend you too. Now this thing is borderline overpowered with only 2 major flaws. One is things getting away from it, which can be remedied by freeze. And 2, Genshin targeting. You might decide to spin you around and send your burst after a mosquito 1 kilometer behind you, instead of the giant demon ghost wolf you just pissed off by dumping water on it. As for notable constellations, C2 is what gives you the cool triple burst effect you saw in the trailer, and C4 gives her a tiny bit of utility with a 30% defense shred for 6 seconds on her burst. So how does this all work together in gameplay? First of all, it is very easy to forget, and believe me, you often will, but you have a short on-demand cryo buff by simply dipping into Senho. On the bright side, just moving around or dodging will buff you without thinking about it. Then it really freezes down to bursting anytime you have a window where you can keep your target in it. Or just throw it out and hope for the best. Her skill is great at generating particles and applying cryo, and if you play her as a sub DPS you can just swap out. If you want to play her as a main DPS though, remember the pattern we spoke about. Senho to buff your blade, and line it up with Hyouka to further buff your charge attacks and spam it as much as possible. And you're now a master of the Kamisato Art. I usually like to finish these with one last pun, but I think this time I just wish you a nice day.